Hello everyone, happy Sunday, happy beginning of December, happy near the end of 2021, depending on how you reflect on 2021. Honestly, if anything, it has been an incredibly surreal last year, year and a half, 2 years, depending on how you look at it. And surreal is a word that I personally have embraced about our lives as they've been in the very memorable past as we're living through history. And what I can hope is we're going into the end of 2021, and I absolutely acknowledge that that many of us have experienced beautiful things and tragic things, and all I can hope and ask for everyone listening to this is to do your best to create a means to find something that is optimistic for you to go into 2022. This surreal life that we're living is not ending anytime soon, and I hope that's acknowledged and recognized, and no better time than the present to just prepare yourself for another year that is going to be another moment of history. We have no idea obviously what all of the future holds, but I feel it's not irresponsible to just recognize that the start of the new year isn't all of a sudden a clean slate when it comes to how all of our lives have been. So do your best, like I said, to find some optimism and carry it forward. We are still in the middle of the same campaign that I was talking about in the last episode, 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. We're just over halfway through it, and I would like to take a very brief moment to preface this week's episode of Dwell On It with a day of commemoration or a day of observation. Tomorrow, December 6th, the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. For the uninformed, what happened to instigate this day to be recognized was in 1989 on December 6th. There was a massacre in a school called Polytechnique Montreal. 14 women were murdered, 10 women were injured, and 4 men were also injured before the individual committed suicide himself. You can look it up if you'd like to get his name. I have a thing about giving names to murderers. I feel they don't deserve more visibility than they already tried to claim for themselves with such violent means. Nonetheless, that until 2020, that was actually the longest standing massacre, if I remember correctly, in modern Canadian history. And in 2020, there was the incident in Nova Scotia, which I believe was 22 individuals. Regardless, December 6th, it was a targeted assault against women. It's one more reason why the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence isn't just talking about, hey, be nice to different genders, but to acknowledge and appreciate systemic misogyny and the repercussions that come from that. I'm not saying that it is one way exclusively, but we don't need to get into the details, and you can challenge me if you really want me to go ahead and give you some numbers there, because the stats are there of the amazing bias of violence against women. As a matter of fact, I want to follow that up with a stat that I shared in an email. In Canada, 30% of women, 8% of men, and 59% of transgender and gender diverse people have been sexually assaulted at some point since the age of 15. That's more than 11 million Canadians. That's just a stat about sexual assault, not even getting into homicides or anything like that. It is very clear that the perception of women and gender diverse individuals are less than men, and that needs to be appreciated. As a matter of fact, the site that I'm on, and please let this resonate with you, women-gender-equality.canada.ca, on the bottom of the website there's a leave quickly button. That is an alarming thing that I don't know if people appreciate what that is. That is a button that is available so that if I had an abuser behind me, instead of needing to close the tab and close the browser and everything like that, that button is equipped to get out and erase it, so that there's no evidence that the abuser can see that somebody that they are abusing is looking for help and service and support. Recognize that. That is the world that we live in. And 16 days is lots, but nowhere near enough of time to get that message understood. It needs to be 365 days of activism against gender-based violence. No question. Let's get into the grab bag now, because there's a lot. I'm so excited. This is nuts. And I really appreciate from all the different mediums that these contributions have been coming in on. And I'm really grateful for the participation that has been made for this. And so let's get right into this. Let's see what this week's grab bag has for us. Have you needed to unlearn any habits or feelings after you came out? I felt I had to. That was one of my biggest struggles, as a matter of fact, when it came to approaching coming out, feeling like I needed to be somebody else. I felt like I needed to master all the feminine aspects of life before I would be appreciated or accepted in society. And that was one of the most difficult things to bear. What was challenging for me, even in pre-transition life, I never expected my actual life, the one where I'm actually alive and full of spirit and energy and motivation and passion and desire to live another day. I never expected myself to ever get here. And so I almost shot myself in the foot by dismissing all of the things that I felt I needed to do as well. So it's like, you've got a full weight set and everything like that, and you're like, I really want to get stronger. And even aside from the weights, right? And you want to get stronger and stronger and stronger, you can still do something as simple as push-ups. But you still tell yourself, it's like, there's no point. No one's going to like my muscles, and I'm not going to carry anything heavy anyway. So you don't even bother doing push-ups, let alone the weights. And so the same thing would happen for me when it came to try to at least give myself a position that I was comfortable with, that if transitioning ever came down the line, I wouldn't feel like I was scrambling. When I went to trans healthcare, then things changed just a little bit, because I knew it was like, okay, well, this is happening now. Be more mindful about your voice. Be more mindful about your walk. Be more mindful. Right? And I made sure to cut hard, like in terms of diet. Right? I lost a lot of extra weight because I wanted to have as clean of a slate as possible. I was doing what I can to just try to change what I was appreciating in media. I was trying to just embrace maybe like. They were channels on YouTube and movies and whatever that I felt were supposed to be what I'm supposed to be watching now. I was trying to be conscious about how I would walk or speak. I would be doing all those little things, but I hated it at the same time too, because it felt like theater. My life isn't theater. My life isn't acting. My life isn't make-believe. My life isn't, getting paid to be somebody that I'm not. I wasn't excited to do or practice or try any of those things because they felt forced. And then eventually, after I came out, there was a day in August that my mind just cleared. And I just said, fuck it. Fuck what everyone wants or thinks or whatever. Do what you want organically. Don't worry about things from a past life. Don't worry if you cough a little deep, right? I'm just trying to pull examples of old habits. I can't even think of I was joking with a friend of mine where when it came to sports, I am very vocal when it comes to, in softball, for example, or volleyball or whatever. You call the ball if you're getting it, and I am very vocal about that. You can hear me across the entire facility because I don't want accidents. But at the same time, it was a pretty, gruffy yell. And I was joking with a friend saying, I was like, that's going to be pretty interesting when it comes to playing sports and I'm calling a ball and all of a sudden it doesn't sound like Taylor. and even then I'm like, I don't care. I'll try to be mindful, but I don't care. The songs I sing when I sing karaoke, they're typically still male country songs, typically, right? Or rock songs or whatever. You can check out a karaoke channel I've got on my YouTube page, and you're not finding any Alanis Morissette in there, right? You're not finding any Biff Naked. You're not finding any whatever, right? One day, someday, I'd like to just get into that just for fun, but I stick with what I'm comfortable with. So no, none of those habits I've ever really needed to unlearn, mainly because I didn't associate a gender to them. When I reminded myself that attaching gender to things is actually kind of silly. It's everyone else's problem, not mine. When it came to feelings, what I will say is I tried to live a pretty white/privileged life, right? If all things, if you looked at what I put forward, you probably guess that I would vote conservative, for example. And as a matter of fact, that I have voted conservative in both federal and provincial elections in the past. And it's because I was just trying to fit in, and it was easy for me to fit in like that. It was, and by easy I mean like I could tangibly do it, and clearly people were none the wiser. But I hated myself for every second for that too. The byproduct of that was also embracing a lot of feelings that, like, I didn't allow myself to understand better things like diversity and whatnot. I was really stubborn during my transition of things that like appear to be complicated essentially to many conservative / Republicans. I just wanted to take the life that I was putting forward and just be allowed to be me at the same time, which was a paradox, clearly. It took me a lot of just personal growth to be like, okay, listen, that if you can't have your cake and eat it too, that if you're transitioning, you have to accept struggle. And if you have to accept struggle, embrace it and embrace the community that you're part of, because you're with them and they're with you, and use your strengths now to pick them up instead of trying to just fight for your own life. And so I needed to really get myself into that place. It was difficult. That was a really, really, really difficult thing to go through, because I didn't understand why things needed to be so complicated. But it didn't take long, right, of allowing myself to be me, that I realized that it's like, this is fucked up, and now I understand. Now I understand why there's so much advocacy and so much like the pleas for awareness and so on. Now I get it. That was easy to unlearn, but it absolutely was something to do. But otherwise, when it comes to habits or whatever, I burp and fart. Simple enough. Right? Let's put it that way. I burp and fart. Is there a fantasy land that you go to get away from transphobia? Oh, okay. Is there a fantasy land you go to get away from transphobia? No, kind of. Like once in a blue moon, when I get to, play a game without feeling guilty. There's a couple video games I absolutely love or loved, depending on if I still play it or have played it. And I appreciated the world environment, and it was nice because I felt really immersed and taken away. It wasn't necessarily by intention. There's not much that I do to be like, I experienced transphobia, therefore I have to run to a place that I feel safe in. And I appreciate when people need to do that, because transphobia is difficult for many. It's not right. It'll never be okay. And when people, if involving themselves in what is fundamentally a distraction is healthy for them to get away and go to a place that they know is safe and they're not going to continue to be abused, I fully encourage it. That's never really been my style. I've always been the type of person to just take a punch on the jaw and be like, okay, so that's you. Okay, that's you. My biggest fear when I was growing up and knowing that I was trans wasn't about how people would deal with it after the fact. It's the fact that I wanted to feel like I knew I was going to be loved still somewhere. I always knew that I'm going to be a victim of abuse and violence and hate. I knew that. There was no point trying to imagine anything otherwise, but I never knew if I was ever actually going to be loved or appreciated or accepted. That was one of my biggest struggles when it came to transitioning and coming out. So when I deal with transphobia, it's like, honestly, at this point, as silly as it sounds, it's like breathing air, because it's gonna happen. It happens. Whether it's active, right, and direct in your face, it's passive just by the experience of others who are either too ignorant or trying to feel sly that they're not being transphobic. It just happens. I don't allow myself to let it, like, oh, that's a moment of transphobia, right? The things that are more unique are the moments when it's not a transphobic experience, right? Like going to the store and getting mammed, right? It's oddly nice, right? Where I don't know why I shouldn't expect it, but you hear like, cool, right, you're good. and go from there, right? I still don't take away like a this place is a safe space for me now, but it's like, hey, cool, right? You're one of the very few people who know how to be nice and actively promote it. That's kind of like how I handle transphobia, by just being like, okay, cool, you're a bigot, or you're ignorant, or feel free to ask questions if you ever want to become a better person. It just happens. Is there a place that I go to get away from transphobia? Not directly related to that, but there are some times where it's like, okay, I'm kind of done with life right now and I just need a personal reset. When I was mentioning the video games, two that I've caught myself totally appreciating just the environment. One way back when was Destiny, and I just loved the, like, I never played it too much, but there was like the first major city that you got to and just the hub, and honestly sometimes I just took my character and I just sat at the like, if the city is the same as it was, I haven't played it in years, but there's a place where some ships showed up, which I think is what took you to other areas or whatever, but there was a ledge and I just sat at the ledge and I looked and just let myself look into the environment, right? There was that moon-esque type of object, whatever it was, and then you just hear the social hustle and bustle behind it. It was just nice to be somewhere else that wasn't life, and you just get to hear chatter. That was way back when. And then another place that I like to fall into when it comes to video games, Horizon Zero Dawn. My gosh. If I felt the need to buy another TV, which I don't, but if I felt the need to upgrade my TV to, something that is 2021 instead of, like, when did I get this thing? 2015? So if I upgraded my TV significantly and then got a PS5, the new Horizon Zero Dawn it's just exciting to think of it, because the environment in Horizon Zero Dawn was so beautiful to me. And then even just including the story, such an empowering story for Aloy, and I can go on and on about how it just resonated with, like, just overcoming, like, stereotype and misogyny, and appreciating independence while also embracing community. And then just add the plot itself. I'm not going to get into it in case anyone hasn't played it, but seriously, if you have a PlayStation, it might be on Steam too, play it. Totally play it. My gosh, it was such a gripping story. I did cry at the end. I 100% cried. But when I was in there, I was in that environment. Nothing else existed. It was utterly fantastic. So that's kind of where I go to. Like I said, otherwise, like, I don't actively move to a place when I experience transphobia. It just comes with part of the day. Is it safe to assume that where you grew up wasn't trans friendly? Yeah. Born, raised, lived in Winnipeg my entire life. I'd like to say that if Winnipeg was, trans inclusive from my earliest memories, there might have been a fighting chance to feel like I may or may not have come out earlier. But then let's add the added elements to it. When I was a kid, I got put into a Catholic school, and so that environment in itself is, it wasn't inherently trans friendly. I even remember it was they had a school policy, of course, with hair length, that boys couldn't have long hair. And I remember there was one time I got stopped in the hallway because I was growing my hair out, so I liked long hair. Big surprise. It was the early 80s, so, like, unfortunately it was a mullet, but still, right? I liked long hair. There was the feeling about hair at the back of my head that I felt comfortable with. It made me happy. I remember I got stopped by one of the teachers, and she's like, "Brad, you've got beautiful hair, but it's getting too long. It can't be past your shoulders." And I pointed to a picture of Jesus in the hallway, and I said, "What about him?" So I had detention. I went in about religion last week, right? Feel free to go ahead and take a look at it. And I know on reflection that it looked like I was really going after religion, especially in terms of Christianity. That's just from, like, obviously with personal experience, but every time that I mention religion or faith or whatnot, please understand that my intention is to underline that it is across the board, that not every religion or faith are identical in their practices and policies, but fundamentally, that as I mentioned about religion, one of the core aspects of it is to instill fear in followers, to ensure that everyone is kept in line. So that is one thing that I want to circle on that. But otherwise, yeah, like, I didn't feel like I was in a culture, right, or an environment that was trans friendly. With that too, I can't remember if it was last week or not. I do remember somewhere that I mentioned that the term transgender, I know I mentioned in the past that it was in the 70s, but I'm pretty sure that it was in 1971 that the term transgender was brought forward in terms of, you know, medical and psych communities to use to help understand and you know, when necessary, diagnose an individual. Even with that, like that term itself was still so fresh in even my own life. I was born in 1981, so literally that term was only brought forward professionally 10 years earlier. I'm not making that an excuse, don't get me wrong, but that also doesn't mean that it needed to be, as of 1981, that it needed to be trans friendly. That I feel very strongly that I left little nuggets of hints of, you know, gender diversity in all aspects of my life as I grew up. And, you know, I kind of hoped that it would have been, you know, helped to be supported, because I was still a kid, right? Like, it would have just been great to have a conversation that wasn't, you know, accusatory or ridiculing or flat even, right? Of like to position things to not let me just avoid an answer, I guess is a good way to put it. Because without having confidence of support, why would you put yourself in so much vulnerability, right? But yeah, fundamentally, I really got the business when it came to trans inclusion, right? Like I said, it was the just the community itself, like the city and the environment and everywhere in a whole, was inherently not trans inclusive. Yeah, pretty safe to assume that. I'm grateful that we're in a world now, at least over in the Western world and at least in Canada, that it is becoming more and more trans friendly, but we're nowhere near close enough, because there's still too much abuse before recovery, or there's too much abuse before protection. The trans individual is getting violated in some way, shape, or form before somebody steps in to reconcile things, right? It's not enough. There's the trans individual still needs to get punched in the jaw themselves, metaphorically, before any other steps go forward to either make it better or address it. Would you rather know all the answers or know how to get all the answers? Easy. Know how to get all the answers. If I knew all the answers, things would get fucking boring. And actually, as a matter of fact, just thinking more along those lines, I'm gonna have fun with this question. If you were a superhero and you knew all the answers, everyone's gonna come to you. And it's not like, do you know how to give an answer that sounds like an answer? It's like, if you knew the factual answer to everything, you're going to be a walking version of Google, and mind you could make a lot of money off that as well. Well, what type of life would that be? My gosh. Well, mind you, I guess it depends on the paycheck. But anyway, in seriousness, right, if I had to just kind of bring it back to like real life, if I knew how to get all the answers, I would appreciate that. That's an awesome question too. I feel like I've heard something similar to that, but I've never heard about how to get all the answers, because I do appreciate the curiosity. I appreciate the empowerment on myself too, of like, it still leaves learning, it still leaves like the problem solving, it leaves the it just leaves the opportunity to let yourself grow instead of already being at peak. Do you have any talents? Is there one that you have that you can credit to being trans? Wow. People tell me I'm good at things, but I don't know if they'd be considered talents. Like, when I think of talents, I think of people with extraordinary abilities, and I do things that I'm good at, and things that I do I'm good at. But I've never considered myself to be extraordinary. People say that I sing well. I don't agree. I've heard people sing and that they're like, that is fucking magical. I like singing, but I wouldn't enter a talent competition with that. I can speak passionately. I can do public speaking. I can I can learn skills and do them. I'm good at sports. I can coach. I can but I don't consider those to be talents. And maybe that's just because I've never allowed myself to give myself credit for those things. And honestly, even to this day, still do. And probably because the vast majority of my life has been like, don't celebrate this about you, because who cares? Because you're not living an authentic life. So who cares if you're good or not good at something? Does that kind of make sense? I would love to have like a common vote of, you know, if somebody, like, or not even somebody, but if there was like a pool of individuals who organically said that you are talented at this because reason, then sure, I would appreciate that. right? And then I would accept that. And not to say that when other individuals tell me I'm really good at something, not to say that I don't hear or appreciate it, but it's an individual opinion that may or may not be biased. I still love it, don't get me wrong. But and please continue for everyone who shares independent positive feedback. Please continue, right? I'm not saying positive feedback is a bad thing. I appreciate recognizing being good at something, but that's also relative, right? It's a relative word to, what are we comparing it against? And that's just me. I'm being like really critical about that. So I probably have talents because if I there's nothing that I like I practice by myself, right, as my own personal like goal or anything like that. So if I have something that would be considered a talent, I have shown it to the people around me, and not being like, hey, watch me do this, but like, it's just part of what I do. Is there one that I can credit to being trans? That kind of goes back to what I was saying. It was like, is there anything that I do presently that people would consider to be a talent? As I mentioned, right, I'm very much an advocate, and that said, though, I still compare the effort and energy and gain that many others are able to do, and I'd easily say that they're light years ahead of me, and it's because they're just inherently gifted for those types of things. I fight because I don't like getting fucking being on the receiving end of injustice, and my passion is like, I don't want someone else to deal with it. It's not right, and that's all it is. It literally is. It's objective and logical. It's like, it is not right for me to experience 39 years of oppression and suppression and not take my experience and my motivation and my knowledge forward to prevent other people from having to do that. I don't find that to be a talent. That's just a personal drive. So no, maybe, probably. If I have a talent, let me know. If I have a talent, let me know. I really wish I could say, I was like, yeah, I can do a Rubik's Cube in 14 seconds or something like that. I don't know, right? I wish I could say that, but I don't. I just feel that I do things and I work hard at them when there's something that I'm passionate about. That was a fun series of questions, and I'm very grateful for all of the questions that have been asked previously and is still coming in here and there on different mediums. As I mentioned, please do what you can for helping continue to raise awareness about 16 days and even for tomorrow. It's not ending anytime in the near future, but it won't end any sooner if there's not a collective effort from everybody to hear and recognize its importance and act on it. Please feel free to touch base if you want to know more, if you want to figure out what you can do with your own strengths to get engaged. Gonna wrap up. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Have a great week as well, everybody, and we'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.